Hello everyone, this is Angela and welcome to my channel, Angie the ENTJ. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and click on the notifications bell so that you'll know whenever I upload any new content. Okay, so I am here for the good and salt of the earth people. I like to empower others through knowledge because I recognize that being an ENTJ Myers-Briggs personality type can be an asset for others. Less than 2% of the world's population are ENTJ, and only 0.9% of us are women like myself. This means that 99.1% of the world sees things differently than what I do. However, we ENTJ personality types tend to be very successful in our endeavors. So I share my perspectives in order to help others to be empowered, and I like to give everyone the tools that are necessary to see when someone is pulling the wool over their eyes, such as you, who's listening, so that you'll know when someone is trying to play with you as if you're a musical instrument. This is why I stick to empirical data that is backed with evidence, and I show you the numbers related to the situation as well. So in today's video, we are going to talk about monogamy and whether or not it is natural. Some of the first videos that I put up on this channel were an economic analysis of monogamy versus polygamy, and the way that I approached it was not for the sake of proving that polygamy was wrong. Surprisingly, the way that I approached it was from a professional perspective. And that was without any emotion or any bias. My aim was to simply see what the truth is. If polygamy was the winner and the best way, then I would have announced it simply because it was true, whether I liked it or not. However, when I perform the economic analysis of it, when I can see that the majority of nations on the planet that stay in a constant state of economic and political upheaval contain societies where polygamy is the norm, when I see that the high amount of consanguineous marriages, that's just another way of saying that cousins are marrying one another, and the reason why cousins are marrying one another is because polygamy creates a bride shortage. And to top it off, polygamous nations tend to be poor. It was monogamy for the win, not because I'm biased about it, but the empirical evidence shows it. However, we have people out here who are claiming that monogamy is not natural and that everyone should soften their minds into accepting that polygamy is normal. And while they do say that, what I notice is that they do not provide empirical data when they say this. By the way, they hardly ever, if I would say never, talk about economics. So in today's video, I'm going to approach the topic from a different perspective, since there are panderers, in my opinion, who are going around and saying that monogamy is not natural, which is implying that polygamy is natural, right? So let's begin. Here's the first observation that I have about what they are claiming. You see, if monogamy was not natural, then why are so many people climbing onto boats, climbing through dense and dangerous jungles in order to migrate into monogamous nations? They are coming from places where polygamy has been ingrained and a part of their society and ingrained in their culture for centuries. Most of these people are men, by the way. So why are they leaving a place where they have the upper hand, where they can have as many wives as they want, and their society will support it? I get why the women would leave. Most women don't want to live like that. But there are single men and entire families that are leaving. I'm talking about a man, his wife, and their children, oftentimes very small children, babies even, to embark on such a dangerous journey. Why are they leaving their homeland and coming into places where polygamy is illegal? And you will go to jail if you're caught. Let's take a look at some of the news footage which shows the desperation of these people that are migrating. And then I will return.
Safety. But these journeys started long before. Migrants from Asia, the Middle East, and Africa flew into Ecuador or Brazil, where visa requirements are somewhat lax. Haitians also used this route as a springboard north. But to get from Colombia to Panama, they have to cross the Darien Gap by foot. It's the only missing 66-mile break in the Pan American Highway from the tip of Argentina up to Alaska. Migrants go first to the end of the road in Colombia, the port town of Necoclí, to head west along the Caribbean. The passenger manifest was global. Most had little idea of what lay ahead. They dock in Capurganá, a tourist town, now a trailhead for migrants headed into the Darien. We set out to join up with the migrant trail and reached a makeshift camp where smugglers wait for migrants. At dusk, a group of Cameroonians and Pakistanis arrived. They were exhausted and relieved to find the last spot on the trail where they can get hot food.
The refugee tragedy and trafficking that began in the Strait of Sicily has spread eastward across the southern Mediterranean as desperate millions flee conflict and violence in the Middle East, North Africa, and Sub-Saharan Africa. Each asylum seeker has a unique story, but nearly all have the same goal.
I had to find a way to save my life. So I have to save my dear life.
We take a risk to reach, to the safe life.
I come to Syria and to Turkey to save my life and my family life, my children's life.
We just hope for safe life.
They make dangerous crossings in flimsy boats from Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, and Turkey, landing during the night or at dawn, exhausted but overjoyed to have reached the European Union. The mass migration across the Mediterranean in the years since the Arab Spring in 2011 has presented Europe with a moral and political dilemma that threatens to tear the Union apart.
I'm from Iraq. Syria.
I'm from Syria.
Syria. Afghanistan.
Syria.
So here you go. This is the next leg of their very long journey. Look at them all queuing up. There's several hundred here. They'll be
What's hardest to relate to is why you would risk your life, the life also of your children. What would push you to do this? The relief that you see on their faces is just astonishing when they arrive. Some are in shock, they're dehydrated, exhausted. And this, remember, is the beginning, not the end of their journey through Europe.
So that's the latest 40 people or so arriving here, but thousands more have arrived on these beaches in the last few weeks, and they're now part of an elaborate smuggling system. The boats and the life jackets being provided on the Turkish side, and those boats being salvaged this end, and some of the engines being sent back to Turkey. 7 out of every 10 people now coming to Europe by sea this year have made this journey to the Greek islands from just over there, just across the way.
Just a few days ago, the Sri Lankan Navy stopped these people trying to get to Australia. They're desperate to escape the economic crisis and say they have to risk the dangerous journey. More than 300 have attempted to leave on boats in the past month.
People who are educated can't find jobs. We don't have food to eat. We know this is not the legal route, but we're risking the lives of our children because we have no other choice.
From our helicopter, and these show what is happening in Calais, where lorries are either stationary or slow moving, and it's leading to an opportunity for migrants who have been camped out in Calais to try to hop on board those lorries as they attempt to get across the channel to Britain. Currently 3,000 migrants in camps in Calais being held there as they try to cross over from France to the UK. Calais really has become the focus of attention recently because the numbers of migrants there have swelled quite considerably in quite a small period of time. More than 3,000 now since April, and you can see there on the side of the road they're walking around very openly looking for opportunities to get into the back of lorries. No doubt the drivers completely unaware of what is going on behind them, but this is all being picked up by our helicopter crew, and there you can see the traffic which is making its way slowly to the port. The problems there caused today by that strike action by...
Okay, I'm back. And listen, I have empathy. If I were in these people's individual shoes, if I was one of them and I didn't know any better, I would do the exact same thing. I would be climbing through the Darien Gap. I would be crossing the Mediterranean on a boat, or I would be crossing into Australia on a boat too. If I was sitting in the dark, eating only once a day, and within walking distance or swimming distance or boating distance, where I can reach a place that's lit up at night, where I can eat comfortably several times a day, where I can send my children to school for free, then absolutely, I personally would walk, swim, ride a boat. I would stow away on a train, on the back of a tractor trailer. I would do whatever it took to live a better life too. I'm just saying, I have empathy, and I'm just looking at this situation through a human lens. So this brings me back to the panders of polygamy. I can guarantee they cannot provide an empirical, data-based response with numbers and evidence in a way that you can see clearly. You see, there is something known in economics as net migration. It is known as an economic indicator. There are thousands of them, and net migration is just one of them. What net migration does is it keeps track of how many people are entering into a nation or leaving from a nation. So if that number is positive, it is showing how many people moved into that nation from overseas. If the number is negative, it is showing how many people have left that nation. So let's look at something real quick. And before I go any further, a bit of a disclaimer here. I am not taking a dump on any culture, any ethnicity, any religion, or anyone who would be considered a protected class in the U.S. This is not why I'm about to show what I'm about to show. I'm just sticking to the economic data. So back to what I was saying. The U.S., the United States, has a positive migration number of over 561,000 people. So in 2021, what this data is showing is that more than 500,000 people moved to the U.S. And those are the ones who were officially counted, by the way. And that goes the same for all the nations I'm about to describe here. Canada was nearly 200,000 people. Now, let's go to nations where polygamy is the norm. And you'll see that they're showing that. Now, when we go to the nations where polygamy is the norm, more often than not, they are showing negative net migrations. At the World Bank, there is a particular economic grouping known as the Arab world that includes the nations of Algeria, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, the United Arab Emirates, or where Dubai is located, y'all, and so forth. All but one of the nations listed in the Arab world category, that would be Djibouti. Djibouti is the only one that had people moving into it in 2021. The rest of them had a negative net migration amount. Let's see, nearly 3,000 people moved to Djibouti in 2021. Okay, another World Bank economic grouping with nations that have societies where polygamy is common includes sub-Saharan Africa. Again, y'all, don't throw tomatoes at me. I'm not taking a dump on anybody, not on the Arabs, not on the Africans, not on anybody. And I completely understand that not all people from these nations agree with the practice of polygamy. I got it. I understand. So going back to what I was saying, some of the nations like Angola actually have a positive net migration where nearly 30,000 people moved there. However, places like the DRC, or the Democratic Republic of Congo, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Cote d'Ivoire, or that would be Ivory Coast for us English speakers, Nigeria, South Sudan, Ghana, just to name a handful, all of them have negative net migrations, some more sizable than others, like Central African Republic in 2021 had more than 85,000 people migrating away. You know, all in all, the World Bank estimates that in 2021 alone, 444,246 people migrated away from sub-Saharan African nations. And they are being topped a little bit slightly more by the Arab world economic grouping, with a number of 458,710 people that migrated away from these regions. If I were to add the net migration of people that are moving away from the Arab world with the people that are moving away from sub-Saharan Africa, that total amount would be 902,956,000 people. However, that number is still slightly less than the amount of people who are migrating from South Asia alone. 925,916 people have migrated away from the World Bank's economic bloc that's classified as South Asia, and that includes the nations of Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, and Sri Lanka, just to name a handful. And there are other economic blocs, such as the Middle East and North Africa, that are showing a net migration, or again, that's the number of people that are leaving these places and resettling somewhere else in the world. That number exceeds 370,000 people. So you see, those people who say that monogamy is not natural may be able to persuade you with philosophy, but they cannot show you the empirical data or the numbers. I just showed you both. I am here to open your eyes. I'm not here to waste your time. You see, they can come with philosophy, but they hardly ever, if never, come with numbers. And the numbers that they do come with usually are skewed to fit their narrative, not to reveal the truth. And I know that most of you may not be into numbers or may even get overwhelmed by them. So here's what you can do. Ask yourself, or ask the polygamy panderer, this first question. Here's the first one. Which nation on earth has a society that resembles the lifestyle that you are advocating? chances are high they may want to point to the UAE, where Dubai is located, or Saudi Arabia because of their oil wealth, or to even Indonesia, right? Okay, again, not taking a dump on anybody, but there's a reason why I said that, because it brings me to the next question that you could ask them, and that is, what is the United Nations Human Development Index, or the UNHDI ranking for the nation with a society that resembles the lifestyle that you are advocating? Now, the UNHDI was developed by two people who were originally from polygamous nations, Pakistan and Bangladesh, because they realized that it was not enough to just look at a nation's gross domestic product or how much economic output that they have, how much profit. It wasn't enough to say, oh, okay, the U.S. has the highest GDP, so they should be ranked number one in the world because they make the most money. They realized that. So what they understood is that you had to grade the quality of the life for the citizens who reside within those nations. So based on their quality of life, which includes access to education, access to health care, access to basic things, food, shelter, so on and so forth. What were their rights like? Are they equal to each other, or are they class-based? Do they have slavery in their land? Do they oppress people? All of this kind of stuff. So they ranked it based on that. So if the polygamy panderer is brave enough to answer this question, because chances are very high, they will point to a nation, or they will call out a nation that doesn't even score within the top third of the UNHDI. Okay, so if they're brave enough to hold the line and try to stand 10 toes down on their perspective, as if it's correct and true, here's the next question that will really expose them. Ask the polygamy panderer, why have you not moved to this nation yourself? I can guarantee you that when you ask them that question, you will be able to hear the clouds move. Because by the time you finish asking them those three questions alone, that's going to shake them up. Because they do not know what to do when they are faced with a well-informed person who is not sold on fantasies like bacon growing on trees. And for those of you who didn't catch what I meant about bacon growing on trees, listen, historically speaking, in case you didn't know, there was a time where the United States attempted to ship African Americans back to Africa, okay? Even though they may have been born in the U.S., never set one toe on African soil before, at that point in time, this is the great-grandchildren of the people that they brought over from Africa, okay, that they're now saying, okay, you can go back to Africa, okay. Because at that point in time, there were so many people enslaved that they were afraid that if they gave everybody their freedom, that it was just going to change America drastically. So one of the solutions that they had was, and this is what they actually felt, that all they had to do was ship African Americans to Africa and turn them loose into the country, not continent, but country of Africa. And then all of the wild African instincts will come back to the African American, and that they will blend in after all because we are all black. Yeah, it sounds ridiculous, right? Because it was. But it was a belief. And one of the things that was told to African Americans as a way to entice them to board the ship and sail to Liberia was that bacon grew on trees. This is historical fact. So coming back to what I was saying about polygamy panderers, once you expose them and show them that you're not the kind of person to believe that bacon grows on trees, try not to laugh at them once their face drops from the shock that you are not as stupid as they thought you were. See, this is why I'm arming you with data and numbers, okay? So that they can stop playing with you. That's because you would need to keep your face straight when you ask them this final question. Yeah, there is a fourth question. This final one is really going to get them. This is what you need to ask them. Why are you encouraging me to do something that you have yet to accomplish? All of these are fair questions. And the reason why they will not be able to substantiate their claims with numbers and empirical data is because there is nothing to support their claims. Bear in mind, I'm a numbers girl. My opinion does not matter, or nobody else's opinion matters when it comes to data and numbers. When I observe a situation, the only thing I trust is whatever the numbers is showing us, which goes back to, what I was saying earlier. If polygamy is the best lifestyle, then okay, why are those nations typically at the bottom of the United Nations Human Development Index, the UNHDI? And why do we not see a large swath of U.S. citizens, Canadian citizens, UK, French, German, Denmark, Finnish, Swedish, basically Scandinavian and Dutchland citizens migrating into polygamy strongholds the way that we see citizens from polygamous strongholds migrating into monogamous nations? And most importantly, why are polygamy panderers constantly on their soapboxes advocating for this lifestyle when they themselves are not living in places where it is legal, or even they're not even living in places like Utah or the outskirts of Colorado and Arizona, where there are societies that will turn a blind eye to it. They're not even living there. I have an earlier video from, probably more than a year ago when I was actually out in Utah and I posed that question. Let me tell you why. It's because you have a criminal in your midst. Now, before I go any further, a bit of disclaimer. There are those individuals who are indeed genuine in their belief, and they have been brainwashed into believing that polygamy is natural. They drank the Kool-Aid. So I understand those types of people are around. They've already drank the Kool-Aid. However, run those same 4 questions by those who have even drank the Kool-Aid, and they will not have answers. They'll change the subject. They might get irate. They'll cut off the conversation. But they won't have any viable answers. I guarantee you that. So, now there will be some who will point to nature and say that polygamy is natural because different species of animals are not monogamous, right? See, what you can do is ask them, which polygynous species of mammal build its own home? See, I love nature, and I think that nature offers us humans an opportunity to understand abstract situations and to ascertain the truth without human interference. There is a lot that can be learned from nature, which is why I brought it up as a conversation talking point to begin with. I didn't mind people telling the truth about nature and using nature as examples to parallel human phenomena. But the problem was it kind of got out of hand, and some people got mad at me because I spoke up and I stand 10 toes down on what I said. However, that's water under the bridge for me right now. I've moved on to bigger things. So back to what I was saying earlier. What you can do is ask them, which polygynous species of mammals build its own home? Which ones? Some people expect to see natural phenomenon and think that human beings should imitate everything that they see. So there are animals that build their own homes, from insects to birds to mammals. Now, if we want to look at human beings through a biological lens, we're considered mammals, okay? So that's why I asked, which polygamous species of mammal in particular builds their own homes? Which one of them get twigs and branches and do whatever they got to do? Because especially when we talk about birds, beavers are mammals, okay? Those species that build tend to be monogamous. They have a mate and they typically mate for life. Now, since human beings are considered to be mammals, if you're going to use the argument that it's natural to be polygamous, then one must be able to point to an animal in nature that is a mammal that is also polygamous and that also builds its own shelter. That's because polygamous animals are typically nomadic and they don't build shelters. And if you really want to go there, nations on the planet where polygamy is typically the norm face development issues. I'm not calling people animals. I'm using a parallel here. I hope you understand. The infrastructure is lacking and sometimes non-existent. The quality of life tends to be low, which is why part of the reason why their people are migrating. And to be fair, if Blackistan was a nation, it could also easily disprove the notion of polygamy being a natural lifestyle, because you can also see poverty and strife within Blackistan, along with the lack of development, because to be polygamous means that you are not industrious. You don't build. You just live your life in a constant state of instability, like that old school song, Papa was a rolling stone. Wherever he laid his hat was his home. And when he died, all he left us was alone. Y'all know how that song went. I tried to play it for you, but, I would have gotten a copyright strike. So y'all have to listen to my acapella on it. See, he was polygamous, unstable, never built anything, always in conflict with those around him. And yes, you see these tendencies amongst animals too. And humans who try to live like this will eventually reach a point of instability. That's not my opinion. That's the economics at work. And you can use nature as a guide to ascertain that abstract. If numbers are not enough for you, you can set your own sights upon nature and observe which one of them are living in structures that they built. I'm not talking about natural structures like bears finding a cave, a natural structure, and living there. Okay. No, I'm talking about actually taking things and building them. So let's get down to the real nitty gritty. Why do these polygamy panderers need you to believe in something that is illegal in all of the nations that the migrants who are currently risking their lives are climbing through jungle, swimming and riding boats across dangerous waters in order to resettle into? I'll tell you why. Part of the reason is because they are in the find out stages of what happens when the grift runs dry. And that grift is patriarchy. You see, in patriarchy, the man had the most privileges. So it favored the birth of sons who would then be able to uphold the patriarchy using their brute strength. However, men do not give birth. Women do. So in order for there to be more men, there had to be women available who birthed and nurtured boys. Yet thousands of years of mismanaging humanity via patriarchy has gotten us all here in 2023, a few days away from it being 2024, where we stand right now. There are not enough girls and women on the planet to pair up with each boy and man, respectfully speaking. And this generation of people who are advocating for patriarchy are realizing that they bet on the wrong horse. And for those of you who don't get that idiom, it just means that they thought something was going to happen in the future and it turned out that it's not going to come true. They bet on the wrong horse. You see, they bet on the male, when in fact, their performance is dwindling worldwide. They don't want to work. They are averse to going to school. They are searching for the blow-up doll, Stepford wife, with a pulse, this mythical, fantastical woman who doesn't exist in reality, never existed, and there are more men on the planet than there are women currently. Add to it, there are factors at play globally that are similar to what happened in Blackistan. Just know that it is a global phenomenon, which includes gentrification, where the poor in an area have been displaced by the rich. Then on top of that, we have inflation going on. So the ideology of, oh, all it takes is love. All you need is love. Baby, that's been tossed out. People ain't trying to hear that no more. Add to it, more women have tasted freedom. And in the course of our freedom, we pursued education because we didn't want to remain the fools that patriarchy needed us to be in order for them to thrive. You know, patriarchy thought that it was entertaining to abuse our trust by having us believe that bacon grows on trees, or that if we drank our meals and remained the size of a preteen while being a fully adult woman, or if we became a Michelin star chef who cooked meals for our husbands from scratch daily while keeping a spotless home, or do whatever crazy hijinks that it took that would quote unquote guarantee us a great life with someone who was taught to hate our very existence. But in the process, we become the laughing stock. We're always getting the losing end of the stick. So we got tired of being, made to be stupid. So women, we decided to invest our time and energy into ourselves, improving from within, and it just so happens that we pushed for a higher quality of life. We left those who wanted to keep us backwards and confused in their dust, in their underdevelopment, in their lack of progression. We got our passport decades ago and traveled the world, made friends and connections all over the earth. We did what we wanted to do, and now what's happening is that the shackles of patriarchy are deteriorating and they're rusting away. See, I've been to Italy, France, Spain, long before. I remember when the average black male did not want to travel. Well, I want to go all the way over there for. I'm not saying all black men are like this, but on average, they were. They ain't got fried chicken over there. Yeah. And baby, I was in Italy, Spain, France, Greece, Cyprus, Tunisia. And I'm sure I'm leaving quite a few out. But anyway, Portugal is another one. Yeah. So even if all the men on the planet decided to round up all of the women on the planet and shackle us and try to force us to comply to their creepy, psychotic, weirdo way of life, okay? Or do the touch-free equivalent, such as overturning Roe versus Wade, they will quickly realize some inconvenient truths. First, there will not be enough women for each man to shackle onto. They'll run out of women. See, they're panicking because they are in the find out stage of realizing that all along, when they thought that they were controlling us women and dominating over us and trying to change us and alter us and so on and so forth, that when they thought they were fighting us, they weren't fighting us at all. I know it sounds strange. See, they were fighting nature. The very nature that they try to use to convince you that polygamy is natural. You see, the natural gender birth ratio for any species on the planet, from plants, mammals, amphibians, insects, including human beings, is 1 female for every 1 male. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. Even in the species that are polygamous, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. That's why the male is constantly fighting off other males. Because if it was a 1-to-8 ratio or a 1-to-20 ratio, then there wouldn't be any competition for that male. See, if there had never been any interference with nature in the form of patriarchy, what would have naturally happened is that by the time each little boy and each little girl grow up, respectfully, minus the 10% who are part of the rainbow community, I get that. But for the most part, by the time each girl and each boy grows up and becomes a reproductive age, then there would have been one person available for each adult. One man for one woman for one man globally. See, in order for polygamy to have been natural for human beings, especially, there would have had to have been multiple girls born for every boy. However, patriarchy used their misogyny to interfere with the human birth ratio. They fought nature. And I'll tell you in a heartbeat, nature is an invisible genius, and nature always wins the fight. So here's how the misogynistic birth ratio appears. Now, this is how it appears when all of those children grow up to become adults from a global perspective. Now add to it that we're dealing with femicide in the form of domestic violence, honor unalivements, witch hunts, and so forth. All thanks to patriarchy and misogyny. This is the reason why there is a surplus of more than 70 million boys and men on the planet, many of whom are expecting to marry multiple women or to have a wife and a mistress. Meanwhile, those who upheld patriarchy are nervous AF right now because they have all these hordes of boys and men on their hands who are angry. Their ball sacks are backed back. They ain't had no access to no woman in God knows when. And they are believing that it's us women, especially us Western, quote unquote, modern women, who are being difficult. No, we women are not being difficult. We are being exactly the way that nature designed us to be. Patriarchy should have never existed. It was a grift, and the grift has run dry because there are no longer enough women, and incarceration rates have been decreasing, which was an easy way to get rid of the excess males so that one can maintain the appearance of an endless supply of women. Putting you up on game. So the powers that be are panicking right now because there are more than 70 million boys and men on the planet, and 50 million of them right now are adult men currently on this planet who are in the prime of their lives, who do not want to become brother husbands because they were taught all their lives that it's supposed to be the women flocking around them. And by the way, being a brother husband will be the only peaceful, non-blood-shedding solution to this situation due to the numbers that patriarchy and misogyny created, by the way. So how are you going to convince a bunch of young, virulent men in the prime of their lives who expected to have a wife, a one-night stand, a side chick, and an on-again and off-again girlfriend who gives birth to an outside baby? How do you convince them of the truth? How do you say to them, oops, we kind of got it wrong about a few thousand years back. There's not enough women for each of you to be monogamous. So some of y'all are going to have to become brother husbands. See, the solution is that they don't. You know what they do? Oh, they're trying some age-old tactics, which is to send them off to war. Because, see, it reduces the numbers on each side and then frees up some land. But, unfortunately, that can only go so far, because it's going to be difficult to get rid of more than 70 million boys and men who are in the surplus. And straight up attacking the women, and raiding villages and all that kind of stuff. That's also playing out because these different patriarchal factions are realizing that women are the economy. So the patriarchy right now is between a rock and a hard place. They don't know what to do. They have all these young men on their hands who believe in the lies that they were told about us women. However, nature is making the patriarchy submit to the reality that without us women, you have no nation, you have no society, you have no one to work at your businesses or to worship at your holy places. Like the ancient Romans who were harsh towards their women. Your society, even your entire language, can go extinct. So what are the patriarchs doing to avoid speaking the truth? They are rebranding their grift. Let me tell you something. The patriarchs have been nothing more than a bunch of lazy pimps that beat up on women, whose bodies are then used to keep men living beneath their potential in a subhuman, animalistic existence. Meanwhile, the pimp profits in every direction. Think about it. These people were adverse to marriage. Okay? But now they're not only promoting marriage, but a polygamous one at that. But why? Is it because without us women, there is no economy? So what they are doing is collecting as many women around them as possible, so as to guarantee that they will have an economy that is centered on their skewed objectives. But remember, nowadays, the average woman, if she's not educated and living a better life, she is seeking a better education and a better life. Either way. See, 20, 30 years ago, grown men could find a 14, 15-year-old girl, lie to her about his age, talking about, I'm 16, 17. Sweet talk her out of her panties in exchange for some McDonald's or a birthday cake, and then sweet talk her into doing multiple men a day in exchange for a pair of designer shoes, some makeup, a purse, a name brand outfit, or a hit of some type of narcotic. But nowadays, honey, the average teen girl is looking forward to her promposal. And all the young girls, all the young ladies of all backgrounds, look, they're looking forward to entering college and becoming educated. They're looking forward to living their best lives. And many of them probably already have their own credit card to purchase Starbucks each day. These pedos can't do what they used to do and dangle McDonald's as an outing in front of a vulnerable teen girl and then take advantage of her. Ew, I'm not loving it. Which, by the way, is another reason why the PP bros are going overseas and they're hitting obstacles there too, which I'll talk about in another video. Okay. Going back to, what was I talking about? The natural human birth ratio. You see, if patriarchy had never existed and had girls and women never been oppressed, then the natural gender birth ratio would have been 1-to-1, not 2-to-1, not 3-to-1, or 4-to-1 like patriarchy panders believe it to be, but 1-to-1. However, thanks to patriarchy, this is how we appear globally. This is part of the reason why I say we are not in a gender war. Because if we were, think about it. The war is won when the side who has the least amount of losses is still standing. So if we were in a gender war, then the men have already won. Because there are more of them than there are of us. Think about it. Because here's the example of our current population scenario. There are more eggplants than there are peaches. So what your polygamy panders, let's just go ahead and call them for who they are. They are pimps. This is what these pimps are trying to do. They are attempting to get as many women around them as possible and force them to behave in a way that promotes patriarchal sentiment, being submissive, not speaking unless being spoken to, starving themselves to be below weight so that pedos can feel like they're with an underage girl instead of a grown woman, and so forth. Or they're doing reverse psychology. They're convincing women that they're being empowered, but what's happening is that they're being set up to have random multiple encounters with unsuitable males, which will bring a whole host of other problems. This is why I'm pulling the wool off of your eyes. Okay. And this is why the pimps are so nervous. Because any woman who does not go along with the patriarchy, who chooses to be a human being and not an uncivilized brute, these are pimps, so they have to manipulate the situation. And this is why they're referring to women like me as a quote-unquote modern woman. There's nothing modern about me. I've been the exact same way since nature created me the way that I am. Okay? All women aspire to be progressive and live in technologically advanced places that are more urbane. However, in a patriarchy, to them, a woman is supposed to be nothing more than a blow-up doll with a pulse. So that's what they're sticking to. This is because they need to redirect the anger of more than 70+ million boys and men, 50 million of whom on the planet right now are adults. And they are involuntary bachelors with balls that are backed up, known as incels. And the incels, blinded by this false narrative, helps to keep the pimp rich. But while they're in the process of blaming women for the downfall of civilization and keeping the pimp rich, it doesn't take away from the fact that men are overdosing. They're unaliving themselves through unalivement of despair. You know, basically they're like, I can't take it no more. If this is too much, I'll never measure up. And they drink themselves, overdose themselves, or do other things to themselves. Or even worse, they take out their anger and frustration on innocent people through mass shootings, which further exacerbates the gender imbalance, because in those types of incidents, girls and women are often taken out along with other men and other boys too, along with the elderly, the infants, and so on and so forth. You see, the only way to deal with a polygamy pandering pimp is with stone cold hard facts. See, what I'm doing is arming you with information so that you can ask them, or even just quietly ask yourself the 4 questions that I went over at the beginning of this video. You know, why are you living in a country where polygamy is legal? Why are you over here in the US promoting something that's illegal? Okay. Do you even know why it's illegal? If you watch one of my previous videos, I did cover a passage from a book titled The 19th Wife, where Anne Eliza Young herself, the 19th wife of Brigham Young, one of the founding fathers of the Mormon Church and what would be modern day FLDS right now, she was married to him, and he had a total of 56 wives. They all lived out in Salt Lake City back in the 19th century. Okay, she is the reason why polygamy is illegal in this country, and her book is like hundreds of pages long, detailing her own experiences with it. Okay. So why are they over here peddling a lifestyle that's illegal? You see, pimps are very masterful at manipulating people. What they're trying to do is normalize polygamy in particular so that they can hide their enterprise in the open. Now, I want to be a bit careful here. There are some unions, genuine unions between men and women, where they are paired up with a bisexual spouse who may be in a relationship with both a man and a woman. However, what they're not doing is they're not all out here trying to make their union seem like something that all and everybody should be doing, that it is the natural thing to do for all of humanity. They're not doing that. More often than not, these people are quietly living their lives. They may be swinging or doing couple swaps, that kind of stuff. They do it quietly and discreetly. Also, there are, is the polyamory crowd where everyone is respectful of one another. They're transparent, and most of them are quietly living their lives. Again, they're not out here creating false narratives. So I'm not talking about them at all. It is the pimps who are out here trying to make it seem like this polygamy is the way that things are supposed to be for everybody, and also going so far as to saying that monogamy is not natural. However, in making that claim, they can't show you any empirical data to shore up their argument for humanity. They can only give philosophies and opinions, no data and no facts. The reality is that men will follow women wherever we go. That is because we women are the economy. So the pimp understands that if he or she keeps the surplus males dim-witted and dumb, living in their lower nature, and when they do that, also they have to harass, demean, beat, and be brutal enough towards the women that they are trafficking, that combination will allow the money to continue to flow into their pockets.
What are you? No, please, I'm gonna make some money for you guys. Please, I really will. Please don't do this to me. Make some money then. Hold on, bro.
You are a 47-year-old man. You found out you had a 17-year-old girl on your hands. You should have run like lightning. You had no right, no business, no way in the world. She did not have the world experience, the life experience, the knowledge, the maturity, or the wisdom to get caught up with a guy and make a right decision about the rest of her life. I do believe you allowed her to be an escort. How dare you? I mean, you gonna pimp out your wife? What is that? A young kid, she's barely 18? You don't let your almost childlike wife be pimped out to other dudes. You don't do it.
How can I stop her?
Just like you were stopping me from doing everything else.
Stop. Miss Palmer, look at me. Look at me. Look at me. You got two things going for you, and those two things are the best things that could happen to you, and also doing you the most damage in the world. It is your beauty and your intellect. You're smart, but that does not take the place of experience and information. Correct. And what you've done is that you've been able to use your intellect to get you what you want, but what you want is not necessarily what you need. Do you hear what I'm saying? You need to have your emotional life grow up to meet your intellectual life. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Good luck to you. And I'm so ashamed of you, I don't even know what to do.
A Houston woman has been sentenced to 50 years in prison for forcing a 16-year-old girl into prostitution. That's according to Harris County DA Kim Ogg. 27-year-old Marilyn Joy Wilkes pleaded guilty to 3 charges of sexual assault for a child under 17. Ogg says Wilkes forced a 16-year-old girl into prostitution for a month during the Christmas holiday of 2018. In 2019, the teen managed to escape and called her mother for help. They say Wilkes then followed them in a high-speed chase before stopping after police were called. Wilkes was arrested weeks later.
Police arrested a local woman and charged her with human trafficking. Officers believe that she forced another woman into prostitution. 28-year-old Ashley Ewert was taken into custody Wednesday. News for Jackson reporter Corley Beal is live outside jail, so showing us what led to the arrest. Corley?
Before Ewert ended up here in Duval County Jail, investigators say she dropped off a woman at Memorial Hospital this week. That woman told hospital staff that she didn't want to leave the hospital because Ewert was forcing her into prostitution. Ashley Ewert, also known as Lily, is charged with human trafficking after police say the victim told officers Lily forced her into prostitution. She told police she'd been staying with Lily for 2 weeks at a hotel off Mustang Road. She also told police Lily gave her a place to stay and drugs in exchange for prostitution. Some hotel guests, like Jeremy, found the news alarming.
Shocking, a little surprising. Usually you don't hear about women trafficking women, you know.
According to the police report, the victim estimated for every $200 she makes from prostitution, Lily would give her $20 worth of crack cocaine. In the past, she tried to leave, but the victim claims that Lily wouldn't let her and took her purse with her ID and social security card. On Wednesday, police tracked down Ewart at Emerson Games, where they found she had the victim's identification in her purse.
I got a lot of nieces, and my girlfriend's got some younger sisters and stuff too, so that kind of stuff worries me, you know.
With Ewart behind bars, Jeremy hopes no one else will be forced into prostitution at the hotel. Along with human trafficking, Ewart is charged with living off earnings of a prostitute and possession of meth. Reporting live from JSO, Corley PL Channel 4, the local station.
This is the leader of the Daddy's Girl cult, the black BBW lesbian stud cult that is making TikTok and the rest of the internet lose its mind. Why? Because this cult leader, Angela, is being accused of making her followers cut themselves and a bunch of other crazy shit that we're about to get into.
And Daddy said if with the 700 cuts, they better be neat. You heard what she said. And then after you finish cutting, you need to pray for forgiveness.
Angela calls herself a goddess and allegedly makes her cult members pray to her and worship her like one. But that's only the tip of the iceberg. Like I said, multiple survivors of this cult and current members attest to the fact that Angela punishes her cult followers by making them cut themselves.
So did you ever cut yourself? Yes. And she called and she said, go get a blade. And of course it resulted in me cutting myself.
But that's not where the abuse stops. She even instructs them to pull out their hair when they do something wrong, or to get on their knees and pray to her, or restricts them from leaving their own homes, even though most of these women have never even met Angela in person. The stories about the horrific practices in this group can't be understated. These women are being mentally degraded and subjugated by someone that used to be a part of their community. Yeah, Angela used to be a BBW. She lost weight and she understands the insecurities and the vulnerabilities of this particular community because she used to be a part of it, and now she uses that knowledge to take advantage of them. And not only physically and mentally, but also financially. A lot of these women also send her money on top of everything else. But this is only the beginning of the rabbit hole, because now since this whole story is blown up, the TikToker that kicked off the whole show, King Gianti 1989, the TikToker that exposed this entire story, is now being allegedly threatened by the cult leader, Angela, and her followers, not only to harm him, but to also groom his daughter.
Threatening to groom my 10-year-old daughter? You and your cult should have never did that.
Yes, his 10-year-old daughter. I'm pretty...
Y'all can't hear me? I want the 17-year-old. Bring that pussy here. I said I want that 17-year-old. Bring that pussy here. I'm tired of all this bullshit. Well, 16 is consent here, baby. I said I want that 17-year-old. Bring that pussy here. I want her. She in here?
Not only did he tell us that he is God to these people, but he has admitted he was the leader of this group.
DeKalb County Detective Monica Panosian testifies about the evidence she uncovered while investigating the charges against alleged cult leader Eligio Bishop. DeKalb police arrested Bishop in mid-April after a woman told them she had left a sex cult and that Bishop, her former boyfriend, had posted sexually explicit videos of them online without her permission. Bishop faces 3 counts of prohibition on nude or sexually explicit electronic transmissions, as well as rape and false imprisonment charges. The alleged victim told police she tried to leave this house on Arbor Chase March 24th when Bishop told her he wanted to say goodbye.
He kept holding on to her and stated he did not want her to leave and to bring her stuff back inside. She stated she continued to tell him she wanted to leave, and he became irate and began to tell her that she was his property.
Police say the alleged victim told them she began crying, and Bishop started to try to have sex with her, despite her repeatedly saying no.
Tanya, I don't even know what to say. I should get you a special chair where we can put your wings on the outside here, because you got to be some kind of angel with what you're doing. How did you start making these connections and finding these displaced young people?
We essentially started back in 2008 after we received an email from a pastor friend of ours just saying, would you open your home to be a safe house for people leaving polygamy? And for me, I was shocked, number one, that polygamy was happening in the United States of America. And then number two, what was happening, how they were using this platform, the so-called religion, the polygamy, to abuse men, women, and children in the name of God. And so we said yes and took in a family of 6, and it kind of rocked our world.
You actually started.
The only issue that the pimp is facing right now that is making him or her nervous AF is this, that the society is becoming more educated, more affluent, more skilled. And all of those are risk factors that make it easier to expose him or her for who they really are. This is the main reason why they are going so far as to create skits in order to passively aggressively guide your behavior into accepting first-time dates at the Cheesecake Factory and not to fancier restaurants or to even have fancier engagements. It's because if your standards are high, then it becomes more difficult for them to hide who they are to you. You see, if the going average rate for a first-time date is about $500, just making a number up, then this will make it more difficult for a dude to date multiple women on average, okay? It'll also make it more difficult for an unsuitable male to access a woman who is serious about her life. A woman it's in the woman's best interest to make sure that the guy that is interested in her in that way is financially fit, among other things. Mentally fit, financially fit, all kinds of physically fit. Yes, that's what the feminine does. And on another note, this is the real reason why your passport bros are mad and always flashing their faces and their passports up on social media, talking about flying overseas. The reality is they can't measure up to women in their own age category. We're too far advanced for them. And on top of that, they can no longer rob the cradle or find a barely legal 18 or 19-year-old either. It's because, thankfully, our teenage girls are wanting the glam life. They're looking forward to earning their degrees. They can't be bought with some McDonald's or a birthday cake or a ride home in a car instead of waiting on a bus. They probably already have a car. They probably already have their own credit card, and some of them are graduating with associate's degrees already, you see. Meanwhile, the old dusty male that's trying to talk to them never been to college. You see, when the average person is alert, we can see through the nonsense and call it out for what it is, and that is a scam. This is why they need you, average salt of the earth people. They need you to buy into the idea of polygamy so that you will not be able to ascertain that the so-called husband who just so happens to have multiple wives and is living next door to you is not a pimp with a harem of prostitutes who he is making pay all of their bills by exchanging sex for money. And if you think I'm reaching, for those who, okay, fine. I like to always provide evidence. So here are some examples of pimping husbands. One was even a Baltimore police officer who pimped out his own wife. And here's another one. Here's an example of another so-called pimp husband who had sister wives, in quotes. He was able to use the profits from them selling their bodies to purchase a Maserati. See, the pimp is not an alpha personality. I hope you understand that. They stay on the fringes and exploit. That's why they can shift their grift so easily, because to them, it's all about lining their pockets. They don't care how or what happens. See, they can be smart and dumb at the same time. You think that you can have somebody with a 4th grade literacy rate and a matching vocabulary get a Maserati and people won't be questioning exactly what it is that he does? Because the idea is that if this illiterate person can afford a Maserati, then definitely whatever it is he's doing, I can do it too. You know, they investigated him and found out that he was an sex trafficker, a pimp. And this happens all over the world, by the way. There's a city, Tenancingo in Mexico, and according to the U.S. State Department, it's considered the sex trafficking capital of the world. And it is the largest single source of sex slaves sent to the U.S. And, you know, there's another case in India where a banker, what he did was lose his job and he wasn't able to find another one. So he began to pimp out his wife. A man in Malta made his wife work at a massage parlor. And in Singapore, one man was so ruthless and depraved that he pimped out his wife so that she could get money to pay for their baby's milk powder and diapers. See, stuff like this is the reason why you don't want to be going to the Cheesecake Factory on a date or anywhere else that's cheap. I actually like the Cheesecake Factory, but I can agree that it's not a good place for a first-time date. Not for a woman that's in her mid-20s going into her 30s and older. No, she needs to go to a nicer place. Now, if you're talking about some teenagers, fine. Okay, cool. But anyway, see, these scammers, they need you to believe that a woman with a few roommates is not an actual madam, so that you won't know that you have a brothel next door to you. And let me tell you something, it doesn't stop there. You see, what they will also do is start draining funds from the pool of money that is intended to help people that are in need with food stamps and Section 8. And no, I'm not exaggerating here. Here are some cases from Salt Lake City, Utah, where the very leader of the FLDS church was caught committing food stamp fraud. So while you're out here working morning, noon, and night, paying your taxes so that you can live in a nice community, they will migrate to wherever you are and start draining your community of its resources and indirectly enslaving you, the taxpayer, in the process. That's because they're pimps. That's what they do. They'll brutalize a woman and make her sell her body in exchange for money, but their presence will be so toxic that it'll start draining the city. So they have two sets of slaves, one in their face and one that's invisible. And that invisible one is you. This is because they will be attracting the unsuitable males into your community, which means that the rate of violence will go up. And oftentimes pimps hook their victims onto drugs. So you see incidents involving overdoses, drug crimes, and all that kind of stuff. That will increase too. And you notice how the nice communities in the U.S. are slowly devolving into a variation of Blackistan. You see, this is a decent looking community in the Washington, D.C. area. Let's watch this video clip real quick.
Dozens of gunshots, all aimed at one man running for his life.
The shots were all over the place. I got 5 in my house.
This man and his wife were home when the shooting sent bullets ripping through their walls. Neighbors believe the shooters came from somewhere else. Doorbell video shows them parked and waiting for nearly an hour before opening fire and then driving off. You feel lucky?
Yeah, I mean, everybody in the neighborhood was lucky, including the person that was running.
Doorbell video shows a woman walking a dog, ducking for cover in the middle of it all.
I'm just glad my guests weren't here that next day.
You had a house full just the day before.
Exactly.
People here in the neighborhood tell me they do not believe the man who was running from the gunshots is from this neighborhood either. They say he was seen with a suitcase and a car with out-of-state plates. Police say he's in critical condition and their investigation continues.
You see there? You see people are out there walking their dogs, and because of this element, they're having to duck for cover because of guess who? Guess who it was running and ducking down while people's houses are getting shot up multiple times. So back to what I was saying. See, polygamy panderers are master manipulators, and they need you to be blind to the truth. However, I know a crook when I see one. because I grew up next to my brother, who was a stone hard, cold, armed robber, drug dealer, a rapist, okay? And at that time, an up and coming pimp. And word on the street is that he may have been involved in even more ish than what I just named. Here's a screenshot of some of his charges, which include battery on a police officer and escape. Yes, the Negro even escaped once. He's crazy, and he's a master manipulator who could lie just as smooth and with a straight face. However, he always showed his true self to me because in his mind, I did not have anything for him to talk me out of, so there was no point in him sparing me his true character. And when he got locked up for good, his enemies felt like the coast was clear, and then they began to target me. But because I could see through them, I could not become their victims. Listen, I learned a lot from that felon sibling, as well as his haters, who some of whom should be locked up too, who wanted to use me to get back at him. And that's what I'm also passing on to you. I'm giving you the same insight if you're willing to hear me. I'm putting you on the game by giving you the tools necessary to be able to tell the difference between a sincere person and one who sees you as nothing more than a stupid dummy that doesn't know the difference between their butt and a hole in the ground, and someone who they can easily take advantage of. Because that's what I see is happening out here with these people out here that are peddling polygamy and saying that monogamy is not natural and all that kind of stuff. They think you're stupid. They think you're dumb. And they just doing whatever they need to do to talk you out your money. So going back to what I was saying about pimps, they're prostitutes, and what happens when they move into your safe and sound neighborhood under the disguise of being a polygamous family. So instead of having your nice park for the children of your community to play in, or for seniors of your community to walk safely around in, instead of having little dog parks for your pets, or ample lighting and more police patrols, instead of having money to offer incentives for businesses to come and build in your community, okay, or to expand a road and improve vehicle traffic or make pedestrian traffic safer, instead of creating something like a community swimming pool, a tennis court, a pickleball court, a golf course, okay, instead of, having funds for community festivities that invite outsiders and their dollars into your community while boosting local businesses, what you will get instead is an increase in the amount of crime and SNAP claims for your children who are born to mothers that live below the poverty line, or girls and women who need safe places to hide away from a pimp, because the pimp does not care about the girls and the women that he or she is trafficking, let alone their children, unless it offers him a benefit. So the funding that your community would normally use to progress itself will be devoured by the pimp and caring for the victims and the children who will be left behind in the wake. And they'll be doing this all while pretending to be one big happy polygamous family living next door to you. They are fraudulent. I showed you earlier that the truth is that the people who live in polygamous nations are risking their lives to escape them. Even they are leaving. However, the polygamy pandering pimp is unable to look at you and to be honest enough to state what they really think about you. They're not going to look you straight in the eye and say, something along the lines like, hey, I don't like you. I think you're stupid. And I'm only being nice enough to you just so you can dump your money into my illicit and illegal enterprise. They're not going to tell you that. This is why they have to go into these types of manipulations. So screw them. Keep your standards high and make a pimp cry. And on that note, I have one last thing to say. Okay. See, you all need to open your eyes and see a bigger picture. Earlier, one of the questions that I said that you should ask someone who is pandering polygamy and all these other alternative lifestyles to you is for them to point to which nation on the planet currently operates in the way that they are advocating. Well, see, I practice what I preach. I can answer that question. And for me, it would be Monaco. Now, I say that carefully. I think the U.S. is one of the greatest nations on the planet. But I think we can do better. I think that we can do better. And not only that, we also have the capacity to do better. We just need to utilize it. You understand? So for me, instead of making you devolve and appeal to your lower nature, what I can do, I can point to an actual place on the planet with a society that operates in a way that I feel that could benefit everybody. Okay? And Monaco would be it.
This a rolling, not a stop. Why you don't never stop? It's the flow that got the block hot. Shaka super.
People who live in California, arguably to me, are living in a completely different reality.
Okay, and Monaco would be it. It is the richest nation on the planet. Okay. And Monaco is not the only one. There are other ones like the Scandinavian countries, such as Norway and Sweden and Denmark, and other nations such as Luxembourg and Liechtenstein that are nice as well. However, for me, it's Monaco. I know for a fact that we all can be living like the average person does in Monaco, if not better. If not better. You see, patriarchy has fallen and it has left a lot of good people lost, because as chaotic as patriarchy has been, it was all that many of us knew. So now that we're out here in the big wide yonder with so many new frontiers to explore, right now you are vulnerable. You're very vulnerable. And it's natural for you to look to attach yourself to something that has meaning, that's fulfilling, something that feels familiar. And I mean, that's the natural thing for you to want to do. However, you're vulnerable and you are ripe to be manipulated. So let me give you this little bit of information to hold on to. You're very much so deserving of a great and meaningful life. Your life can be looking like this. You can be living like this. You can be living like Monaco. You see, the average income for a citizen in Monaco is nearly $250,000 per person at $240,862.20. Meanwhile, over here in the U.S., our average income per person is less than a third of that amount, sitting at $76,239.60. And Monaco is not the only place. Bermuda is an island in the Caribbean where the average person, according to their GDP per capita, has an income of about $118,774.80. You see, there are things that are bigger than polygamy and panderers and pimps and whoever else. One of which is that we could be living better here than we currently are. And no, we don't have to slave away on 2 and 3 different jobs in order to achieve that. They are already doing it in Bermuda and especially in Monaco. Meanwhile, I showed you earlier that the truth is that people who live in polygamous nations are risking their lives to escape them. Meanwhile, the residents of Monaco are so wealthy by comparison, they don't even have to track poverty anymore. And this isn't a fantasy. This is real. And you can have it too. Here in the U.S. You see how, unlike a polygamy pandering pimp, how I'm showing you facts, I'm giving you data, I'm showing you a place where it's already being done. And on top of that, I'm sharing with you that we can live even better because we have the land, we have the resources, we have some geographic advantages that are unique to the U.S. that other countries could only dream of. I'm not pumping your mind up on fantasies and fairy tales. See, you can go to Monaco and see how they're living firsthand. A ticket from JFK in New York City to Monaco is as cheap as $508, but you can board a nonstop Air France flight, which costs maybe about $750 per person, a little bit more than that. And that's cheap. So you can hop a flight over there and put your eyes on the place yourself. You can see and you can touch the lifestyle there yourself. Why don't we have the same thing here, if not better, when our nation has put people on the moon, flew spacecraft to Mars, have numerous enterprises and industries that are reaping profits in the trillions of dollars? Do you realize some nations on the planet don't have a GDP that goes above $1 billion? But we over here, we got GDPs that go into the trillions. But you mean to tell me that the average American can't get guaranteed shelter, food, health care, free college education, and a basic universal income? There are bigger fish to fry than passport bums, pandering pimps, and polygamy, and other non-alpha personalities with the podcast, all of whom want to shake you down for your resources so that they can vacation in Bermuda, so that they can go and stunt in Monaco, instead of working to bring the average American citizen on par with the average Monaco citizen, if not better. You deserve the best that life has to offer. So keep your standards high and make the pimp and the panderers cry. Whether or not they're street pimps or religious pimps or political pimps, hold them accountable. They may try to discourage you and call you a communist. No, you're not. It's not communist to reap fruit that is worthy of the labor that you've sown, and for the society where you pay taxes for it to reflect it as well. That's not communistic or communist. So keep your standards high and make the pimp cry. Hold them accountable. That's all I have to say for now. Thank you for watching, and please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and click on the notifications bell so you'll know whenever I upload any new content. Take care until next time.
Hey, Dust, what do you do for the living? I don't know. Yes, okay. Oh my god, the charisma is insane. Where is your car? Oh, this is crazy. Hey man, your style is crazy.
Dime, esto es lo que tú querías.